Hi, I'm Sharon Lannon and welcome to Old Asian Lady. Today we are going to talk about expat life. And for those of you who might not know the term expat, it just means that someone that's living outside of their home or native country. This is Helen and she's going to be introducing our guest today.
Yes, and we are so glad to have Heather here because Heather can have so many information to share as an expat. Because Heather, you've been here in Taiwan since 2011, and how many years is that now? A lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. We're going on, this is we had one year off for sabbatical. We had some family that was quite ill, so we did take a year off. But overall, we're starting year 12 right now, 12 years out of our native country, the USA. So,
And I'm always curious to know, like, why?
Well, I'll tell my story as quick as possible because this is just a short podcast. I was late into the marriage game. I got married quite late in life. I met my husband in my 40s, and we got married. And within a few weeks of getting married, he was a teacher in the U.S., and he had been laid off due to budget cuts. So I said, let's see if we can maybe teach on some naval base somewhere or some military base somewhere. And we got introduced to the international school system, and he was offered a job at Taipei American School. And we took it, and we got married a few days after he accepted the job, and we're on a plane a week later. So my
Holy cow.
Yeah, so I went from being a single mom with a career to being a married woman living in Taipei. So it happened like that. And so that's what brought us here. And so he teaches at the American school here. And so I had a variety of changes happening in my life. I went from being single to being married. I went from having a corporate job to being essentially unemployed. I went from being able to go to my local grocery store and get everything I want to coming here and not being able to find cilantro, right? Like a staple in my husband's meal prep. So the culture shock for me was quite alarming. And overall, I feel like I'm open to change more than maybe the average person. And I was still completely overwhelmed. I mean, within a week, I was, mentioning to you guys earlier when we were chatting, within a week, I was in tears over trying to get a diet soda at a Moss Burger, right? Like, I can't live in a country that doesn't have diet soda, right? I went to a Domino's. I'm like, I need something that feels like home. And so I went to a Domino's Pizza, which is in our little town, Tiamu, where I live. And I'm like, I ordered a pepperoni pizza and I got it in its little box with this little string and I carried it home and opened it up and it had corn on it.
I have to say, Taiwan has really weird flavors of pizza.
Right? Who puts corn on pepperoni pizza? I was in tears. I can't live in a country that puts corn.
The corn wasn't that bad.
Yeah, forget corn.
But then the first thing I had, Domino, again, nothing against the Domino Corporation, okay? I'm not a Pizza Hut fan either. However, who in their right mind would put mayo and squid? Come on. It's a Japanese version. It's a seafood.
How about pig's blood? Pig's blood. Or the little bubble up. Pizza Hut has a special that has
I don't know where you live, and I'm not going to give you.
This is Taiwan. So anyway, back to your corn story.
My friends, you can get normal pizza here. Still come visit. Please still come visit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was extremely overwhelming. And I felt, I felt very overwhelmed. And being newly married and wanting to be a good wife, I was super concerned that I needed to have the house a certain way, and I was having difficulty finding, the things I needed for the home. I remember going to 6 different stores trying to find cilantro, and I couldn't find it. And my husband called me at lunch like he always does and said, have you had any luck? I said, babe, I haven't had any luck. I said, but there's this thing called coriander that looks a little bit like cilantro.
They're cousins. No, they're not.
So my husband Googles it while I'm on the phone with him, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and buy that. So coriander is the plant, and cilantro is the leaf.
Yeah.
Yes.
Phew. That was, I could be a good wife. I could bring home cilantro to my husband. We call it coriander. But there were times during those first several weeks that I thought, I'm not sure I can survive, and I quickly realized that I needed a resource. I needed a place to be able to get information quickly. We do have a lot of expat support, like the center, and I'm not here to plug anybody, but the center's a great place to go. But I needed something quickly. Like if I needed soy milk today, who could answer that question? So I took the initiative with my marketing background and advertising background, and took the Friends in Taipei Facebook page and created a page where if other expats had questions, we could all come together and collectively answer those questions. Like maybe I don't know where soy milk is today, but maybe somebody else does, or somebody saw it at PX Mark last week. So my original plan was it to just be a place for people to just come and ask questions and navigate. But it has really evolved way beyond anything that I thought it would evolve into, and that it is support. It is a place where people can go and
community.
Yeah, it's become really a community. And people find it months before they even move here. You know, people will find it and be like, I'm moving there in 6 months. Should I bring my George Foreman grill or should I leave it at home? Right. So it's become a really great place for people to come and get that support that they need. And I've been told that other Singapore and some other Southeast Asian countries do have other pages that are very similar. So I don't think that mine was original in that way. It was original to me. And I did it because I needed it. I'm happy that other people can use it. The switch that I didn't see coming was not only were people looking for soy milk or a local dentist or, you know, a place to get pizza without corn, people were looking to connect.
Yes.
People were looking to sit with another expat and be able to talk. So I started having luncheons. We would do luncheons every other month. And I would just arrange a place for us to all meet, and we'd all go, and you order your own food and pay for your own food, but we're all going to come to this place and we're going to eat and we're going to chat. And it was during those chats that I realized it was really, the expat living is even more stressful and can be deeply hard and hard for people, even more so than I thought. It can be bigger than corn on your pizza.
Yep,
You're missing
absolutely.
family, you're missing friends. Everything seems foreign. You feel alone. You feel isolated. And a lot of times, this isn't blanketed, but a lot of times when somebody moves here, it's because a husband's job moved them here. And so the husband comes and the kids come and the wife comes, and the husband's location changes, but he still goes to work. He still has his same group of people, or at least similar. His overall existence and meaningful life didn't change. Where the trailing spouse is so lost. So when I realized that they needed even more support, I started doing an adventure group. And so I run what's called TAG, Taipei Adventure Group, in which I help people just check out of everything that's stressing them out and let's go do something fun. We've done, a number of different things, from going to Inga to going to a new.
I did that one.
Yeah, it was very fun, right? Going to Inga to going to the beach. We went to Fulong Beach to just let's go check out a new beef noodle place we found. And just I find that the idea that they have a place to sometimes connect with other expats that are stressing out, that are in an unfamiliar environment, gives them a sense of community, because we lose that when we come overseas. You lose it, right? None of my friends or family came with me, and that was my structure at home. So you have to rebuild that family. It comes with a side effect because they move on. I mean, after being here 12 years, I don't know how many wonderful friends have moved on. But the beauty of it is I have friends everywhere now, in Australia, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur. I have them all over the world now. So there's that side of it as well. But it's not easy, for sure.
I mean, I really had to give a lot of respect for Heather and all the other expats, expat wives especially. I mean, for me, for my incidents, first of all, technically I'm not an expat because I was born here. I left Taiwan after finished kindergarten and then moved on to Chicago. But you know what? Coming back in after all these years, I got here the same year that you did, 2011, because of job change. My husband had a career change. And I'm sorry, as you said, for the men, for the husbands, nothing against it. We have a lot of respect for you. But then the minute you got off the plane, there's a possibility to just go off to work. And they're being focused, and because they're being responsible. But I found myself all alone at the hotel. Day 2 of Taipei, I have no idea where I'm at. I mean, I look like everybody else, but Mandarin was hard to come. It's just got stuck in my tongue, and it just almost like, where am I? Where am I? And gradually, I started to build into the system and start to learn new things about. And then all of a sudden, the fruit vendor 6 months later saying, "Oh, you're doing so well. You're speaking Mandarin now, Maria." That's what they call all the helpers, because I was toned, because I played tennis. I was tan, so I have a little bit darker skin. I wear my flip-flop, but I'm sorry, those were J. Crew flip-flops, okay? They're not regular flip-flops. But then because my wardrobe, and I looked like a helper. And then I just went home crying, like, he called me Maria, and also too, the time I really cried on the MRT, on the subway. Do you know when that is? It was Monday. It was Super Bowl Sunday in the States. And this is like to us, that's just like family gathering, buffalo wings, and you gather, and then all of a sudden you're just here all by yourself. I remember I was holding a fresh fish coming back from the market, and I just stood there and thought to myself, no, this is wrong. This is wrong, because this is when I'm supposed to be home with my family, with my brother, eating all these chips and dips and all this and that. I got so sad, I did something I could never, ever imagine I would ever do it again. I just thought of me, hey, my neighbor upstairs, he's Canadian. Well, I'm sorry, up to a certain point. Canadian, American, I'm pretty sure he watches Super Bowl, right? I literally walk up from my 17th floor up to the 21st floor, and I rang his doorbell, ding dong. And Steven opened it up. He was like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm your neighbor downstairs." He was like, "Yeah, I know that." I'm like, "Are you watching the game right now?" And he was like, "Yeah, come on in." So I don't even know his last name. I just know his name is Steven, and his wife was not home. And I was like, "What about my fish?" And he was like, "Just leave it to the sink." And I sat there and watched Super Bowl game with a total stranger. Well, technically he's a neighbor, a few floors up. But then I was that desperate.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, that because we're both Asian, and even though we are American as well, there's certain expectations of us as Asians in this environment with a sea of Asian faces. So our culture shock is quite different than Heather's.
Yes.
And so, getting to that point, you got your Super Bowl game in.
I'm sorry, with the totally, I don't even know Steven's last name, for crying out loud. I was holding a fish, and it just
desperate times call for desperate measures. I agree.
Right.
But with that, I have a lot of respect for the real expat families, because of all this transition.
Yeah, but I would even go as far to say this, and I hopefully that this doesn't seem like I'm being insensitive in any way, shape, or form, but most of my deep connections with other Asian Americans, their culture shock is quite a bit different, because they are expected. Like, I get the dumb American pass a lot, right? Dumb American, right? Like, oh, she doesn't know any better. She's a dumb. And I lean into it sometimes, right? Like, I'll do something, I'm like, I can pass it off that I'm a dumb American, because I mean, it's a thing here, right? Like, it's silly to say, but there's a certain amount of passes given to somebody who looks like me when I'm here versus someone who looks like they may have been here. I mean, I had a really good friend who was born in Hong Kong. She's not here anymore. She was here for about 11 years, and doesn't speak Mandarin at all, but born in Hong Kong, looks very, very Asian. And she would get in tears because people would get mad at her for not being able to speak the language. Like, what's wrong with you? They look at me and they go, "Oh, that's okay." Right? And so I remember having stories with her where here I thought it might be a little easier for her. I actually think it was harder for her, because she wasn't given any passes. There wasn't any leniency for her and her experience, because she was expected.
Yeah.
So much more was expected out of her than what was expected out of me. So I agree that I think it could be much harder. And especially if you have certain things that are ingrained in you that feel very unique to you, like Super Bowl and Christmas, right? Like it's hard for me here at Christmas. Hot pink Christmas trees with Hello Kitties are not a thing, right? In America. Like what? That's not a Christmas tree. So I do have certain things where I'm like, oh my gosh, like the culture shock is real. And that your Christmases for the most part are not hot pink Hello Kitty Christmas trees.
Oh, she likes Hello Kitty though.
Okay. Well,
I don't know where else they are.
You know what?
for you they are.
No. That was the aftermath of moving to Asia. I'm not kidding you. I was never a Hello Kitty fan, but everybody just assumed so back in DC office, just because I'm Asian.
Yeah, I had to get used to Christmas in Hawaii when it's totally hot. You know, it's just like it's
And I'm
here
from
in Taiwan.
Chicago.
So it's not the snow and all of that stuff. But in terms of how I sort of deal with the expectation that somebody has of me locally, yes, it's very frustrating at times. And my little trick would be just start speaking English. And then there's okay, wait, she's not... Okay, maybe I give her a little bit more respect. So there's little things that we can do to adjust, but it's a learning experience, right?
And a growing experience.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so great. I talk about this with friends oftentimes whenever they're going through, whether it's a struggle or a change in their career. You know, when you repot a plant, you take it out of its pot and you put it in a new pot, it loses leaves at first. It just does. And then it resettles in and it gets bigger and brighter and fuller. But every transition has pain. And I think moving overseas, regardless of whether it was your home country or it's a completely foreign country to you, it is, like we talked about earlier, it's a fish out of water. It's unfamiliar. And you got to kind of be willing to just go all in to a certain extent, right? You got to be willing to embrace it. I had a friend I went to high school with, ironically, hadn't talked to him since high school, shows up here as an expat. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, I haven't seen you in friggin' 35 years. I was like, wow. And he reached out to me, said, my wife is not doing well. She's really unhappy. He's like, I'm wondering if you might just reach out to her. And so I called her one afternoon. I said, I'm going to the local wet market. I was going to Shidong market. And if you've not been to Shidong, it's going to be a little intimidating, right? But I thought, you know what? I wanted her to see that she doesn't have to be afraid, that she can just... So she called me and she goes, I can meet you, but for only 1 hour. I can only meet you for 1 hour. I was like, okay, well, I'll take the hour. It's fine. And so I took her to Shidong and we walked around and we ordered fruit. And because, you know, I've been there a number of times, they gave me samples of fruit. She tried a wax apple for the first time. She tried a guava for the first time. And as we're leaving, I said, oh, the hour's up, so, you know, I'll let you go on your way. And she's like, yeah, I just kind of made that up because I didn't know if I'd enjoy my time with you. So I've got nothing going on. What's next? Let's do something else.
Yeah. It's just getting over that first fear and first barrier.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many don't, you know. And I don't know if it's good or bad, but a lot of corporations bring families here with a driver and a nice place to live. And if you don't want to immerse in the culture, you do not have to. And I find that those folks have the harder time adapting because they're more isolated. They're more alone. The only people they interact with are husband's coworkers. And it's that group that I've been trying to pull out. You know, I've had some that have only used their driver to get anywhere, right? Hasn't even been on an MRT, haven't been on the MRT. Like, to me, the MRT is fabulous. Like, you get everywhere faster.
Exactly.
Like, you don't have to park. You don't have to dodge scooters. I mean, that's chaos out there, right? Get me on a safe MRT. But this friend that I was just talking about, like, she left here. She was here about 4 years, and the next job was Singapore. And she was like, I couldn't have done that had I not been exposed to Taiwan and have you kind of, I mean, she just texted me recently. She goes, we're so happy in Singapore. They've been there about 4 years. She goes, I just can't thank you enough for showing me that it's possible to live here and enjoy the time and not just get through it, which is what her plan was. I was just going to get through her time here. So it's rough, but I think if people are willing to just let their guard down a little bit, it's so robust and so beautiful and such a great place to be.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, but then I think there's still some fundamental, the basics you must know before you hop onto the plane, before you put your feet into Taipei, because you know we're not talking about the laws or anything, but then the etiquette.
Yeah.
Etiquette is a big thing.
Yeah, it
because
is.
especially in my opinion, especially for the Chinese culture. I mean, you should never put this chopstick 90 degrees stand up. I mean, everybody will, especially the old grannies, will kind of come over and like whack you on the head because, well, apparently that sounds like, I mean, that looks like that's the instant at the tombs.
Oh, right.
So it's a big taboo.
Right.
It's, yeah, that's, I did that without knowing, and people just come over and like, hey, mate, okay. I'm like, why? And she was like, and then I learned.
No, I think there's a lot of it. I remember when we first decided to take this job, and literally we took the job. He was offered the job at like 4:00 in the afternoon. We had to accept by 9 the next morning. So we went to a restaurant and Googled, where is Taiwan? I know that
Seriously?
sounds sad.
Not Thailand.
Not Thailand, right?
Yeah.
I just was like, let's make sure I know what we're talking about, right? And so we found out where it was. I mean, it's an island, and so all of these things were running through my head. But we immediately did grab a book about Taiwan and learn some of the etiquette, just on a general sense. I felt like I owed it to this country to be as responsible, culturally responsible as I could be. Did I learn everything before I got here? No. But I think, I mean, some of the things I learned, I did read about the chopsticks. That's ironic you brought that up. I read that typically, as a way to release some of their anxieties and anger, they'll giggle and laugh at a lot of things. Yeah. Right?
And laughing, yeah.
Right?
Anyway, yes.
Which was
Giggle.
important because
Yeah.
something would happen and they'd be laughing and I'd be like, okay, I think they're just uncomfortable or just nervous, right? Because I'm like, it wasn't funny. Like, I'm stressed out and they don't have an answer, so they'll just giggle. You know, they said to expect a lot of staring at my daughter's blonde hair and blue eyed. You would have thought she was a friggin' circus clown, right? They were taking pictures. So it was kind of good to know what could and possibly would happen. Did I learn everything I needed to know? No, of course not. So I think you should be diligent in understanding the country that you are now going to call your home for whatever length of time. And I think most responsible people would do that, especially those who have children. You want to make sure your children are culturally sensitive. There's incidents that happen, where somebody might say something that's culturally insensitive. So I think there's a learning curve is what I mean
Right.
to all of that. But for me, we tried to do our due diligence. We bought the book, we read the book, we studied it on the plane. We had 1 week, so it wasn't a lot of time, so that we could be aware of what we were getting into. But nothing prepares you for corn on your pizza, right? Like nothing prepares you for. I mean, my first can of tuna had corn in it. Like that was like ridiculous. I remember my first chicken. we bought a chicken. Like just a chicken, right?
What's wrong with your chicken?
It had a head on
Yes,
it.
the head on it.
And the beak. Okay, listen to me. Yeah. It had everything. Like I got home, I still have video of it. We laugh every time. But they had tucked it underneath the chicken so you couldn't see it. So it just looked like a chicken that I could just roast.
Mhm.
And I got it home and took it out of the package and it had a head on it.
Even Costco's has the neck on the chicken, which was a really shock to me.
Yes!
When I bought my first one.
I know.
I don't know
Oh
where
my
your
gosh.
lady get your chicken, but my chicken doesn't come like that.
Oh, wow. Right. But there's like a certain amount of things that are like, what? I don't understand. Like, why does that, how
It's a delicacy.
Well, I get it now, but as somebody who grew up in America who doesn't, those are the extra parts. We don't eat them, and we certainly don't bring them home to have to discard them later. Those types of things, I can laugh at them now, but I was pretty overwhelmed with, like, I didn't know what to do with it, right? Like, I don't know what to do with this head of a chicken.
Well, talk about pretty overwhelmed. Well, mine had nothing to do with the chicken. However, my husband and I, we were so broke our first Chinese New Year. Well, you know why? Well, with the new Lunar New Year calendar coming up, we understand we need to prepare red envelopes. Red envelopes, it's those little cash envelopes where you give to your family to wish well, and because that was just the norm, right?
Right, the hung bao, right?
The home
Yeah.
bao, yes, the red envelope.
Right, the red envelope.
Right.
Yes.
Well, with that part, we understand that, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be at the bank like every other wives standing in line for hours, because in tradition you cannot give wrinkle bills.
Mhm.
You need to be freshly printed. The better, the newer, the better, because that's expressing the newness of the
Right,
new year
right.
and this and that. So fine. I mean, I'm sorry, there's ATM machine all over the place. I'll just get it from the ATM machine. So I did that right before the Chinese New Year. Okay, we get the money, but then we ran out of cash because the bank closes for the whole entire week, because everything shuts down for the Lunar New Year. By probably day 4, we ran out of cash. So then I'm like, okay, I'll go to the ATM machine. Ooh, that one's empty. And then I went to another one, and then another one. I think I went over more than 10 ATMs, like close by my house, and realized there's no money. Of course, because the bank system is shut down for the whole entire holiday schedule. They're
Yeah,
not
I mean,
replenished. And we literally looked at each other and say, what are we going to do? So we actually end up eating instant noodles for the remaining 3 days or so, because we ran out of food. Well, the supermarkets was there, but then they were not taking our credit card at the time because we were having issue with the card. But then, so we ran out of cash.
I thought you were going to talk about not having the money to put in the home files. But you're talking about literally existing and being able to feed
right.
yourself.
Right.
Well, at least you're here where you can
Yeah.
get instant noodles very cheap.
Yeah.
So there is that kind of.
But we were counting our coins, and I was just like, I was about to cry again. I'm just like, I'm broke. So this is what it means. I mean, we only did this back in college days, but then.
Well,
then,
but it was just temporary, though.
Right.
It
That was
wasn't-
the first lesson I learned. So the following New Year, first thing I did, I get in line to the bank. I get enough cash.
Well,
'Cause I
lesson
don't-
learned then.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you can just do like me. Hung bao? I don't know what that is.
I was just
You
going to say,
can- I don't know what that
have you ever had your home bao experience where you don't know, I don't know how much money I'm supposed to be putting
Every
in.
time.
I know. Weddings,
Every time.
funerals, Chinese New Year.
I just know you can't do any denomination of 4. Because
Because
four,
that.
right,
that's
because
that.
4
Yeah,
said wrong means death,
yeah.
which is why every expat lives on the 4th floor, because we don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's easy to find.
Right, because all the apartments on the 4th floor are vacant because the locals won't live on the 4th floor. I live on the 4th
It's
floor.
all in the
Yeah.
head.
Well,
It's all in the
We
head.
have the 13th floor in America, so we all have our thing.
that's
But
right.
yeah, no denomination of 4. I never know what to give. I don't. I just feel like I tell myself, as long as it's not a denomination of 4, it doesn't make me eating ramen noodles for 3 days, and it seems fair. I'm going to go for it. I'm sure there's many people who give far more than I have, and for me, I don't have a lot of people to give it to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a helper, which I'm super blessed to have, which I think is a blessing for living here.
Mhm.
And I've been to a few weddings,
Mhm.
but otherwise, I don't have nieces and nephews and all of that bring the hung bao, auntie. I don't have any of that, thank goodness.
So, as within your expat life, I mean, a lot of these things we're talking about cultural awareness and understanding. Was there a specific defining moment that you had where you are in Taiwan as an expat and you just totally said, hey, it's great living in this country. It's, there's nothing else I want to do better. But that defining moment which really allowed you to settle in.
I think for me, part of it was when I went home the first summer. And when I was home the first summer and I was meeting friends that I hadn't seen for a year, I threw myself a big I'm coming home party. Like everybody has to come and see me because I'm here. And all my friends came and everybody was there. And no, I'm going to start crying again. Why did I cry? Your stinking podcasts make me cry. I'm not coming back.
And we're inviting you back just because
of that.
Well, I realized that I had grown.
Yeah.
Mm.
I had grown. And my friends, as fabulous as every single one of them is, and I wouldn't change any of them, their lives stayed the same. And they're happy, and their kids got a little bit older, and they went on that vacation to Hawaii, and they're living their best life. But I had grown. I had changed. I had a different view of how things were. And I realized in that moment, I remember where I was sitting, and I remember thinking, I'm forever changed. Like, I cannot ever go back, right? And I thought that is something worth celebrating, and that's something worth embracing. And I remember when we first got to Taipei, we had met another teaching couple that had been here 12 years at the time. And we met them, and they said they'd been here 12 years. And I was like, that will never happen, ever. I mean, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, this is 2 years tops. Like, that was what our contract was, and we're on year 12, right?
Yeah.
It was such an enriching moment to realize that I had grown, and that I had, and if I really embraced it, because the first year was hard. It was hard. For me, it was hard because I had been a single person for so long. I had made all the money. I had spent the money. I had invested the money. And now I wasn't working. And I was somebody's wife. I had no career. I had this husband who was now bringing home the paycheck. So I thought I better not spend it because I didn't earn it. The whole first year was so traumatic that I thought I can only do this for a few years, because then I got to go back and have purpose.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like I could have that here. And then having dinner with my friends and sitting down and realizing I am growing. And maybe it's not because I have executive, marketing executive at the end of my name, or maybe it's not because I have, whatever. I'm growing. I'm becoming a better version of myself. And if I embrace that, what else could I become? And that's when I came back and I started the Fit page that second year, and subsequently moved on to doing the adventure group as well. So I think that was probably the biggest moment, is realizing that so much growth had happened in a moment where I felt like I was stale. I really did. The whole first year I felt stale. I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have a paycheck. Like, I had a job. I've had a job since I was 9 years old.
Yeah, your identity just kind of shifted.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't
It's
expecting.
the value of yourself diminished, because I resigned my job from DC because my husband made the announcement on August the 7th, 2011, about our 3-year stay because of his job transfer. But you know what? When was the ticket for? August the 15th. He broke the news to me on August the 7th, saying, "Hey, babe, I got a new career. And we're moving back to Taiwan. And our flight is scheduled for the 17th of August." I'm like, "Of what year?" He was like, "The current year." I'm like, "We're in August already." He was like, "Yeah, so we need to pack fast."
Yeah, it's hard, I think, especially for career women.
Right.
Not everyone is a career woman per se. But if you have an identity that is, attached to your career, and mine very much was so.
Right.
I had, again, we kind of talked about this last time, having kind of a crappy childhood, having worked my way up to be an executive at a very large company was unheard of. My mother and our family were welfare people, and we lived in trailers and things like that. So for me to have gotten to this point, I was so tied to that identity because it was as far removed from where I came from as humanly possible. I was successful, and nobody could see the hungry, abused little girl. So when time came to give that up, it was more than just my career. It was everything. And I got married, and it was I literally felt like a failure for almost the first year I was here. And I don't mean like a failure like, I have no value, but I felt like I couldn't establish a value in a place that I didn't know. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't get my feet underneath me enough to feel like I was growing. And then I went and met my friends, and I realized it was happening without me even knowing. And it was happening in a way that was so unique. When I quit my corporate job, they replaced me 2 days later. That's how important that career was to me. They found a replacement 2 days later. There is no replacement for this. This kind of growth and this kind of personal discovery. This doesn't happen at a 9 to 5. This happens by living and experiencing life in a really genuine place and space. And so that's when I knew that I wanted to do this, and I knew I wanted to do it again, and I knew I want to do it again. And we have big plans. I won't get into it now because I don't think we have time, but we have big plans to be what we call Expats, where we're going to go and live places for 3 months, get a visa, live there for 3 months, and get a visa and live there 3 months. And we're going to do that as part of our retirement package, because I feel like if this much growth can happen, the sky's the limit. And I really do want to have all of that kind of growth if it's available to me for as long as I can, for as long as my health and all of that holds up. So
God bless you. My God.
So with your corporate life, I mean, Taiwan was actually your very first expat location that you lived.
Yep, this was the first time. We had never, I had traveled extensively, but I'd never lived anywhere. I mean, I lived in Italy for 3 months, but that was a planned vacation. I didn't live there and work there. I decided I was going to go for 3 months and did. But other than that, I'd never lived anywhere. And this was the first, and we weren't even planning this. This was a job that came up at the last minute. TAS, Taipei American School, had a last minute job opening, and they reached out to my husband directly and said, "We want you. What is it going to take to get you?" So we went ahead and threw caution to the wind, and did it. And but I mean, I remember literally, I'm so funny, I'm dying laughing. I remember going in and quitting my job, and my boss is like, "For real? Like, you're like luckily I'm blessed with the gift of sales and marketing, and so I was our number one producer, so I was making really excellent money." And he's like, "You're like the number one producer. Like, what? You're going to quit?" And so I told him why. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he's like, "Wow, you're going to be an expat. That sounds exciting." Never heard that word before. I didn't know what expat was. But I didn't want to seem stupid to this guy, right? Who just basically told me, "Wow, you're going to go be an expat." I went home and Googled it. Like, I didn't know what it was. I'm all, "Well, yes, I am going to be an expat." I didn't know. That's how foreign this idea was to me. I didn't even know what that meant. Doug, that was my boss at the time. Thank you. He, if you watch this, he introduced me to a word I didn't even know existed. And, but yeah, so this was the first, and it was the first time I hadn't had a job since I was 9.
Yeah.
And we moved here when I was 41. We moved here. So yeah, so I had had a job every day of my life, and then I came here and had nothing. And I remember being so upset. I'll tell you a story. So when I was working in the States, I had a helper that just cleaned the house. Now, she didn't help raise my daughter, but I was a single mom, and I could spend the whole Saturday cleaning my house, or I could spend the Saturday with my daughter. I chose to hire someone to help me. So that's how I justified it. So I hadn't cleaned a toilet, I don't know how many years I hadn't cleaned a toilet. So I get here and I'm like, I don't want to know.
I don't want to know how the story goes.
No, it doesn't go anywhere ugly.
No,
I just know that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to be a good wife, and I'm going to clean the kitchens and clean the bathroom. So I cleaned the toilet, which I hate, by the way, I don't love it. And I remember my husband came home from work and he used the toilet. And I was like, "Oh, this is not going to work for me. You have to go to the bathroom at work." He said, "Why?" I said, "I just cleaned that. I don't want." He's like, "Do you need a helper?" I said, "Yes, I need a helper." So we do have a helper here, and I feel blessed because she's a sweet lady, and she needs the money more than I need to not clean toilets. So I justify it that way. But I'll never forget, he came home and actually used the toilet I had just cleaned. I felt so diminished as a human. I was like, "I can't. You have to pee at work."
And what was his response?
He said, "Do you need me should we hire a helper?" I said,
they
"Yes."
hired a helper.
I said, "We got to hire."
What a sweet husband.
I know. I said, I just, you know what I mean? I think so much of my identity I felt washed away, literally.
Right.
That just felt even more diminished to have him come home and not appreciate, don't dirty the toilet. I just cleaned. Which is totally a normal thing he should do, but in my mind it was like, "Oh no, you won't." So yeah, it was a struggle that first year, but going home, I think, has really put the icing on what was happening, and I was able to grasp it in a way that I hadn't seen by trying to go back to my old life and realize I was too big for my old life. I had grown.
Because we're excited about our new life and our new experiences and how much we've grown. But when you go back and you tell these stories, they'll listen for a little while, but their eyes kind of glaze over. And yeah, exactly. They live their life, and you know, it's hard sometimes to think that your old friends are not exactly the same anymore because you're not the same. But it's also a way to move on and accept. Now, Helen was telling me that you had a potential station in Singapore rather than Taiwan. What was it? Is that right, or did you make the choices?
Well, we so when we had to go back to America because my husband's mother was quite ill, and when we got back, it was important that we got back, and that was a great year to spend with family. We'd been gone a long time, and his mom subsequently did pass, and but we were there for that, which was very important. But pretty early on, we realized, especially my husband, that he needed more purpose than just Home Depot and mowing the lawn.
Yeah.
He was like, I remember when we were leaving, he's like, I can't wait till my only job is mowing the lawn in Home Depot. 6 weeks in, he's like, I hate my new life. I don't want to mow the lawn or go to Home Depot ever again. So I thought, okay. And so he's like, maybe I'll do some part-time work, or maybe we look to go abroad again, you know, since his mom had passed. And so we started looking into some jobs. And there, for those that know or don't know, there's lots of websites where you can go and see where they're hiring. So there were several positions at Singapore American School, which is a really highly desired school to work at. But when we needed to get a referral letter or a reference letter from Taipei American School, as soon as we requested that, they contacted us and said, hey, you know, if you've still got some teaching left in you, which is what my husband had decided, he did have some teaching left in you. He's like, come back here. We would love to have you back. And my husband's a really good teacher. And I can say that because I knew him as a teacher before I knew him as a husband. He taught my daughter, and my daughter has learning disabilities. And he was one of the first teachers that my daughter actually was excited to go to school. The other times it was struggle and frustration and anger and tears. And then she got excited about going to school. So he has a gift with that. And Taipei American School offered him a chance to come back. And we just made a decision, you know what? We love it enough to come back. And I mean, I hate to say this, COVID was finally over. Yeah. I mean, COVID in Taiwan, I mean, people may be on either side of the fence on it. I don't know. I think they tried really hard to do it really good, but it was pretty awful for a while, you know? And we couldn't travel. I actually got stuck in the U.S. for 8 months during COVID because I'm not a natural born Taiwanese, so they wouldn't let me back in.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember that.
Yeah. So I was gone. I had left in January for a business trip and went to come back in February. COVID had hit the end of January. Nope, you can't come back. Yeah. So I was stuck for 8 months until we could, until they lifted the restrictions. So I think during that time, those last year and a half to 2 years here made Taiwan more difficult. So now that it's lifted, now that we can hop on a plane and be in Singapore, be in Thailand, be in Bali, be on the beach, be in Japan.
Right.
Ramen in Japan is life-changing. I feel like Taiwan's still the best option for our family. And it won't be where I say this often to people, you know, barring a bad accident, this will not be where I die, but it's definitely where I feel like I can still grow here. So that's why we came back. Yeah.
And also, too, the funny thing is, how lost can you get? It's an island. Come on. This is what I've been telling myself.
Have you been to the fabric market? You can get lost here.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
And there's Google Maps now.
But yes, you're right. It is a tiny island. There's a lot of.
It's not tiny when you're lost. It's not tiny when you're lost. But yes. I mean, it's a beautiful island.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful island, and it has a lot to offer, from the little surrounding islands to Kenting. I mean, there's beautiful stuff here. But I think almost the trademark for Taiwan should be we're an hour plane ride from everything great. Like, I mean, you can get on a plane and be in Tokyo. You can get on a plane and be in Thailand. Like, I think that's part of the
three and a half hours.
But I can't get on a plane and be in New York in 3 hours. It's here, a layover in Houston. I mean, it takes you 7 hours to get to New York, right? I could be in Thailand in 3 hours. Yeah. So I think it's an amazing place to be, but it's also an amazing place to be within the Southeast Asian footprint. I think it's amazing.
So if you were to give somebody advice or a tip, whether or not to be an expat, whether in Taiwan or somewhere else, what would you say?
I think my advice would be, if you have even the tiniest spark of adventure soul, this will feed that spark. Nothing, I used to tell this to Tim all the time. If at any point it doesn't work, you just get on a plane and go home, right? Like nothing's forever. So I think sometimes you just have to say to yourself, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if this is an enriching experience for myself and my family. And if it's not, then you just get on a plane and go home, right? Like nothing, I think sometimes people think it's all or nothing, and it's not all or nothing. I mean, I think you should go in with that mindset, like I'm doing this and I'm going to give it my all. But if for some reason it just doesn't fit, then you can go home. I have a really, really good friend here who she's gone now. For whatever reason, she hated every minute here. Every minute of it.
She hated it?
She
I know
hated
people
every
like that,
minute
yes.
of it.
Yeah.
The only time she had any joy, I took her to Wulai, and have you been to Wulai?
Yeah.
It's lovely. We went all the way up the mountain, hiked through all the back areas, super lovely. She said that was the single only time that she's ever felt some joy when she was here. She just didn't love it for whatever reason. Right? And so as soon as her husband's contract was up, she's like, do not ask to extend it. I want to go home. And so she went home. So it's not to say that everyone can do this. It's some people can't embrace what this entails. It entails being vulnerable. It entails leaving caution to the wind. It entails being able to be willing to be a fish out of water. You have to be willing to open yourself up. You have to be willing to hand signal when you need the bathroom, or your charade skills need to improve. But I think if you're willing to just set all of that aside and say, I'm going to give this an honest shot, I think for the most of the people that I have met, I would say 98% of the people that I have met are richer for it and are better people for it. I know I am. I know my daughter is, and I know my husband is, without a doubt. And almost all of the friends that I've met that have done this end up getting addicted to the idea of it. Then don't go home. They go to the next city, right? They go to Thailand. They go to Singapore. They don't want to let it go because it's so unique that they don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
So it just kind of give you life into a different perspective, because then you get to see the world from different angle, and you just embrace it. Yeah.
I think you're right, 100%.
Okay, there you hear it. This is signing off on Old Asian Lady. Bye-bye. See you guys next time.